Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel, depending on if this is your first time here. My name is Raj, and I go by the DFS process for the last 6 years. Been making fantasy videos, making another year of fantasy football for Draftkings, FanDuel, throw in prize picks as well. So it's about that time, under a week away. First game is Thursday. Got a great one between the Bills and the Rams. Looking at week one, Draftkings value picks. We'll have other videos out this weekend, as well as like showdown picks. For that Thursday game, we'll have a first look for Sunday, the 11th. Today, we're looking at value picks on DraftKings that'll help you make your lineup. Just guys that are cheap, that might be having a new role this year with some guys gone or maybe some guys in new spots. Pricing hasn't adjusted some of these guys as well. So that's what we're focusing on this video. Values, all guys below $6,500, most guys below $6K. So if you guys are excited for football, please be sure to hit the like button. It really helps me out. I'll have videos out the entire season. You can subscribe. Check out Twitter for updates. Stay in touch. You can check out the website if you need help making your fantasy football lineups. I do provide lineups for those. And let's go ahead and get started. I don't want to waste too much time. So quarterbacks, Mahomes is $7,700. He's going up against the Cardinals. For me, for DraftKings, I go cheaper at quarterback. Normally, I don't like to go over 7K for a quarterback, especially when we have a lot of guys with upside in the 6K range. Looking at Jalen Hurts against Detroit, he's not super cheap at this price tag, but he's still a guy that I would consider because he should be a top 5 fantasy quarterback week one. We know all the rushing upside that he gives you on a weekly basis. 10 rushing touchdowns, led the league last year, was averaging, about 11 fantasy points just with his legs, and he got a lot of garbage time stats, which helped him average that 22 fantasy points per game last year. And he gets a good matchup against Detroit on the road with some big weapons that he's gotten now with AJ Brown, and those guys go back a while and have had great chemistry in training camp. So first quarterback that sticks out to me is Jalen Hurts, just based on his price tag. I have no problem if you wanted to pay up for any of these guys, but that's just something I don't like to do too often, unless we have like bottom end running backs that have a guy that's hurt and you got like a 3K wide receiver or like a 4 or 5K running back that's going to get a lot of playing time. More quarterbacks that are cheap would be right at 6K, and I like to go with guys that give you some rushing upside. So Trey Lance at 6K. This is his first season going into it being the starter. Garoppolo just got paid a lot to be the backup to him, but he's another guy that is great with his legs. You'll probably see more rushing touchdowns for him this year and just more use of those legs. We're able to get Deebo Samuel back after there was rumors he wanted to be gone, so that's going to help him. Ayuk got off to a slow start last year, but then he came on strong late. Lance, as long as he has those guys, I think he'll be fine. But 6K, I do prefer getting 800 more to Hurts, but he's another value. Even Derek Carr, I don't mind. He's teaming up with his Fresno State teammate now with Devontae Adams. Got still big weapons with Waller. Renfro's a beast out of the slot, so it should be a high-scoring game against the Chargers. Rematch of that crazy game last season where it could have ended in a tie, but didn't. 5K range, don't mind Matt Ryan just because he's going up against a terrible, terrible defense in the Houston Texans. There's a couple of different websites to use for your fantasy football, DraftKings, FanDuel analysis. This website, Chart Football, they ranked all the secondaries, and Houston Texans, Giants going to be well bottom this year. Projected to be. They got some good ones at the top end, maybe some wide receivers you want to avoid going up against the Packers, the Bills, the Chargers, and that makes some sense. And we also have Fantasy Pros we're looking at last year, but this will be great as we get to the middle of the season. Using this tool, which shows how many DraftKings points these teams gave up by position. So last season, we saw the Commanders gave up the most to quarterbacks, followed by the Chiefs, the Jets, the Ravens, the Texans, to running backs. Once we get there, it's the Jets, Chargers, Seahawks, Lions gave up the most DraftKings points there. So that's also another great tool to use. But don't mind Matt Ryan, especially if you're going to be stacking him with the wide receiver we'll get to. It should be a pretty cheap stack between those guys. But don't mind Jameis Winston either. He's another quarterback that gives you upside. He's a kind of a boom or bust pick, but going up against the Falcons, who are going to be ranked about bottom 5 in secondary. They have just pretty young guys back there. Winston is another guy that will also use his legs to get you fantasy points. We know he loves to throw the ball deep and just throw the ball a lot in general. He has 3 solid weapons. They got Jarvis Landry. Michael Thomas is now healthy. Looks like, even though he missed a couple weeks with hamstring, should be good to go. And they got Chris Olave, rookie first-round wide receiver. So Winston has weapons. That's all he needs. So he's like a really cheap value quarterback that looks solid for week 1. Running backs, you got your top-end guys. Don't mind getting to any of these guys if you're looking to pay up. Getting to a couple values I will talk about will let you get up to Taylor, who looks awesome against the Texans. Get up to Derrick Henry against the Giants. Even Eckler against the Raiders. If you look at last season, teams that gave up a lot of fantasy points to running backs. We saw the Jets gave up a ton. The Chargers, the Seahawks, the Lions, Texans are up there. The Giants are up there. The Raiders are up there as well. We've got 3 of these top-end running backs going in really soft matchups. So those guys, in terms of your pay-ups, are awesome. Values in the mid-range, like Swift against the Eagles, is fine. At 68, he gives you upside in catching the ball as well as getting you probably 15-plus carries on the ground behind, going to be getting most of the work in front of Jamal Williams. But Najee Harris at 64 really sticks out. He had a huge game against the Bengals in week 3. People thought he would take off after that. He still had a very good year fantasy-wise. He was just very steady. It was just that the yards per carry for him were low at sub 4. But he's going to be the workhorse for them. Going to be looking at a lot of carries, a lot of the red zone carries, goal line carries, as well as going to be a target machine out of the backfield. So for DraftKings PPR at $6,400, he looks like a really, really good value at that price tag. Other guys would be like Josh Jacobs, looks solid still at 63, even though he's a little bit riskier, but they got rid of Kenyon Drake, so basically might be ceding some third down work to Amir Abdullah, but he looks fine, but I still prefer Najee Harris. You got some guys in tougher matchups here, but Barkley for GPPs looks great at 61. Even like Montgomery, Bears are thin offensively. They're going to rely on Montgomery, especially now that they lost Allen Robinson to catch some more passes out of the backfield. They brought in Brian Pringle to kind of make up for that, but Pringle doesn't compare to Allen Robinson at all. Gibson, unfortunate news to Brian Robinson, is going to miss at least the first 4 weeks, so looks like he was losing his running back 1 role. Should reclaim that for the first few weeks at 58. Looks like a good value. Travis Etienne at 56 looks fine, but just, especially if Robinson is in, there's probably not going to give him a huge workload in his first game after missing all of last season. But if Robinson ends up not being ready, which I would be surprised if he's not, then he looks really good. Edwards Zaler at 54, great. Chiefs revamped offense, brought in Juju. They lost, obviously, Tyreek Hill. Edwards Zaler is going to be the main guy out of the backfield, still going to be mixing in some of their other guys back there. But in terms of their wide receivers, they also brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling, so it's a revamped offense, but they're still going to score a lot of points. They're still going to look to throw the ball a lot, but Edwards Helaire is a guy that would also catch passes. But the second really cheap running back that I want to mention is he's behind some guys that are going to be in timeshares that are going to be backups, and this guy is going to be the lead dog after they got rid of Marlon Mack, and that is Dameon Pierce from the Houston Texans. He had an awesome preseason, touchdowns, big yards in terms of yards per carry, and even though he might not catch a ton of passes because they have Rex Burkhead who will take a lot of that, I still think that if you're getting 15 plus touches for Pierce, still a okay matchup. Colts are a good team, but anytime you get a starting running back sub 5K, you're going to be interested. So he is definitely a pretty good play at running back or even in the flex. Wide receivers, this is value, so I'm not looking at any of the guys above 7K. They're all great. I'll look at my other video that I have posted when I actually make a full lineup. But this one, we're just looking at values. So in terms of values, first couple guys that really stick out would be like A.J. Brown. Great matchup against the Lions. Great chemistry with Jalen Hurts. $6,400 looks awesome. Right above him, Terry McLaurin, 65. Going with the new quarterback now, Carson Wentz. But really soft matchup against the Jags. Further down, Marquise Brown is going to benefit with Hopkins missing the first 6 weeks, I believe, suspension. So he's going to be the number one option until Hopkins is back. That's going to benefit him. We got Cooper is going to be the number one in Cleveland, but 59, a tougher matchup against the Panthers. I expect it to be more of like a lower scoring game, more, at least from the Browns side, more running the ball in this one. So he's not my favorite value, but still a decent price tag for tournaments. Michael Thomas is definitely in the mix at 57, even though it's his first game back in quite some time. But Winston, Thomas stack would be solid. But I'm going Darnell Mooney as a first value. We saw him have a pretty big year. At times, he had some big games. 16 targets, 13 targets, another 16 target game. He was just getting a lot of those, and a lot of these games were with Allen Robinson. Now that they lost Allen Robinson, they brought in Byron Pringle. They got a third-round draft pick as well, who's going to take some work. But Mooney's going to be the guy in Chicago. He's going to be Justin Fields' favorite weapon. And they're going up against the 49ers. They probably will be down in this game. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. So Mooney at 57 looks like a pretty good value. In my opinion, one of the best values at wide receiver is going to be Michael Pittman. He gets a new quarterback, and it's going to benefit him a lot. I believe getting Matt Ryan, just a veteran that knows what he's doing, not going to throw left-handed passes in the red zone like Carson Wentz was doing last year. But we saw with Matt Ryan, he loves to kind of dial in on a couple wide receivers when he was with the Falcons. Dialed in on Julio Jones for years, and then once he got Calvin Ridley, dialed in on him for a couple of years. And now that guy's going to be Michael Pittman for the Colts. If you look at the Colts depth chart, at wide receiver, they don't have much. It's basically Pittman. They have Pierce. They have Campbell. Like Doolin might get a couple targets here and there, but Pittman is by far, hands down, the number one option who's going to be on the field 90+% of the snaps, I believe, if not 95+. And it's going to be a red zone target for him as well. So Pittman should have a monster year. Take him in best ball if you can in your drafts, in your fantasy drafts. Definitely on Draftkings at 55 for week 1. Looks way too good to pass up. So even going further down, there's a couple other guys like Thielen. Even though the matchup isn't super easy against the Packers, it's basically Thielen or Justin Jefferson who's going to get a lot of the targets there. Jefferson should have a huge year. He's being taken top 3 usually, like being taken 3rd overall or 4th overall in best ball drafts or even in drafts in general. So Thielen might get overlooked a bit, but he still continues to catch a lot of touchdowns. He's just a pretty steady guy there. Another one that's really cheap that looks pretty good, in my opinion, for value is Christian Kirk. He gets a matchup against the Washington Commanders. Let's call them the football team. But he got a big contract for them, $72 million. He's had some pretty decent preseason games against them, like 8 targets against the Steelers. They're going up against a defense that surrendered a ton of passing yardage last year. If you look at their secondary ranking, they're about middle of the pack. For this year, look at how many points they gave up to wide receivers last year. They gave up the 4th most. So Kirk going to be the number 1 guy. They still have, they traded away Chenault, so that's one less guy for competition there. But it's going to be him, Marvin Jones as the main guys, and they also have Zay Jones, who will get some targets. They kind of brought in more of a veteran group around Trevor Lawrence, which I guess will help him this year, hopefully. Sub 5K wide receivers that are affordable, like maybe Chark, 48, but I like Parker a bit, also at 48. You have Scantling just for tournaments. You don't know what he's going to do. There's a lot of cheap guys. A lot of these guys are going to have to, we'll see how much work they get, but Scantling, Hardman, Juju, they're going to be the main guys, I would believe, in 3 wide receiver sets. And a lot of these guys, especially Valdez Scantling and Hardman, are super cheap. You have Chris Olave, who's going to be emerging as a big red zone threat for Winston. You could look to him at 45 if you wanted to take a shot. And then even like right here at 41, you have probably like Tony there, but you know, there's not, and maybe Sky Moore also, that they drafted him high, their top wide receiver draft. So he's going to probably work more and more as the season goes on and getting more targets, especially if Hardman or Valdez Scantling struggle a bit. Tight ends, you know, like Kelsey is a great value in his own right with at this price tag, even though the matchup isn't easy against a team that's good and the Cardinals against tight ends, but it doesn't matter for him. Mahomes is going to get him the ball, especially this year without Tyreek Hill. He's going to get huge. He's going to have a huge season. So he looks great just based on the new role that he's going to get. Like even Kyle Pitts, like their number 1 wide receiver is Drake London, a rookie. So, I mean, Mariota, back when he was starting with the Titans, he loved to throw to Jonnu Smith a lot, and those guys had a good connection, so expect that to happen with Kyle Pitts this year. $4,500, like Dallas Goddard. His first season this year as being the number 1 tight end. Last year, he actually had like wide tight end 1 numbers at the end of it because they traded away Ertz. Even early on in the season, he's had some big weeks. But we know Hurts will look to tight ends a lot. He's going to be probably the 2nd most heavily targeted guy behind A.J. Brown. Maybe Smith is mixed in as well. But in terms of touchdowns and Goddard has had some drop issues throughout his seasons, but without Ertz for the whole year now, he had a training camp going in expecting a big role. I expect him to deliver, and it is a soft matchup. So speaking of Ertz, he looks solid as well at 44. 37, Austin Hooper. The Titans are thin in terms of their pass catchers. It's going to be Treylon Burks, who's expected to have a big role, which wouldn't be surprised. But Robert Woods is number one, Treylon Burks, and Hooper. Those are like the three guys that are going to count on to get targets. So he looks good as well. Didn't mention Treylon Burks or Robert Woods, but those guys are also good values at wide receiver. Actually, might even get to Treylon Burks here in the flex. He's 5K. You could look to Robert Woods. Expect him to get more ownership. But in terms of the round one wide receivers that were drafted, you're going to see a big role for Burks, and you're going to see a big role for Drake London. I personally like Burks week one more just because the matchup is so good against this terrible Giants pass defense. We saw him catch a touchdown even after injuring his wrist in the preseason. So he's going to be a red zone threat for them as well. So at 5K, we're going to take a shot for a value. And then at defense, a couple that look appealing in my eyes would be the Jags going up against Carson Wentz and potentially with some of those fumble issues that he'll have. So that could be one. They're $2,500 below them. Potentially look to... you can always punt with a defense like the Vikings or something like that. But if I would go up a little bit, I would be considering the Dolphins at $2,600. They had some big weeks last year. 14 interceptions, 12 fumble recoveries, 48 sacks, 6 defensive touchdowns. They had a couple, especially at the end of the season, having a couple games over 25 or 20 DraftKings points, which is great. Crazy for a defense. So going up against at home, expected to do good things. It's going to be the year that they finally overtake the Patriots in the AFC East standings. I like them at 26. I also like the Commanders at 25, going up against Trevor Lawrence. And even though they're without Chase Young, still had some big weeks last year. And we know Lawrence does have some interception issues and some turnovers that's normal for a young quarterback. But yeah, that is about it for the video. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know more values that you guys have in mind for week one. But thank you for watching. You can hit the like button if you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more videos. I am super happy football is back. Hope to help you guys all season long. And I will see you all next time.